On CEO Unplugged, how's it going? Bartell hanging out with Janine Yorio. She's the CEO and founder of Compound, a real estate investing app that lets individual investors buy shares in condominiums in the world's most popular cities. Hey, Janine, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks, Bartell.
It is so great to have you here. Let's talk a little bit about you and kind of your background. What has led you to being the CEO and founder of Compound?
Well, when I was a little girl, my dad worked at Intel and my mother was an architect. So I grew up around software and real estate. And my mother would take me to construction sites and I would hold the tape measure. And it was pretty awesome. I remember thinking my mom was awesome. But I also remember that the people that owned the buildings were the bosses. They told her what to do because she was just an architect. And that message stuck with me. It made me realize if you own the buildings, you have the power. And that power dynamic has informed everything I've done throughout my career and certainly why I've built Compound today.
Excellent. And it's that teamwork that I'm sure that you saw with your mom and working with all of those people that kind of came together and brought you to understand what teamwork is all about. And
absolutely.
Whenever it comes down to entrepreneurism or coming up with an idea, the teamwork is very key.
Definitely. And I have an amazing team. I'm lucky that way.
That is great. And tell us about Compound.
Sure. So we're based in New York City. We got started a little over a year ago, and we're a mobile app. And what the mobile app does is connect strangers from all around the world. As you might know, in New York City today, a condo costs on average $2 million. Mm-hmm. So very few people can afford to access that asset class. At the same time, we all know wealthy people who invest in condos because they're a really great place to park your wealth. I've lived in New York City since I graduated from college, and I have friends and family members who were smart enough or had the money to buy real estate that they lived in. They never set out to be professional investors, but they just bought places that they knew and understood. And lo and behold, a decade or two later, they've created vast amounts of personal wealth for themselves. What we do at Compound is lower that initial capital requirement so that more people can make that same investment and get in on the ownership ladder in expensive cities like New York, Miami, Austin, and Nashville.
Janine, have you used your real estate background to come up with this formula that we talk about for Compound?
So I spent a decade as a professional real estate investor investing on behalf of some of the most sophisticated investors in the world. I was a partner in a private equity firm, and we invested pension funds and endowment money and sovereign wealth funds. These are pools of capital that have access to the best deals, the best minds, and have enormous amounts of money to invest. So obviously investing on their behalf taught me what makes a good investment and how to document a great investment, how to find one, and how to make sure that the investors are protected in the event of downside scenarios. And I'm taking that same exact knowledge base that I used to apply to $50, $100 million, $500 million deals and applying it to individual apartment range in price from $500,000 to $2.5 million with the same sophistication that I was using when I was investing much larger amounts of money.
So great. On CEO Unplugged today, Janine Yorio is here, and she is the CEO and founder of Compound. It's a real estate investing app that lets individual investors buy shares in condominiums in the world's most popular cities. So now for everybody listening and watching today, let's talk about Compound and take us through a real-life example of how it all works.
So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, anybody who's ever used Venmo or Cash App on their phone knows how to transact on their phone. You download the app, you go to the App Store or Google Play, search for Compound, and then once you open up the app, you'll see that things are sorted very logically. They're sorted by geography. So most real estate websites, they kind of start with, I don't know, there's always a mishmash of transactions you can look at, and that didn't make sense to me. When you think about real estate, you think about it first by the neighborhood, then by the city. So we sort it by city. You check out the city, figure out which one interests you the most, and then look at the real estate deals. And you can make an investment that's as little as $50 today. You can choose exactly which properties you invest in, and you can build a customized portfolio. So it's really easy to use. It's something you can do while you're completely distracted, walking down the street, talking on the phone to your friends, and make a small investment so that you can get comfortable with real estate investing over time.
So, Janine, I know one thing that people are watching and listening to us say, they might compare this to a word or a phenomenon that was so big back in the day, which is time sharing. Mm-hmm. Do you not like to use that as a comparison, or do you?
Well, timeshares are kind of a four-letter word, and they're synonymous with a lot of shady schemes that fleeced money from people or used hard sales tactics while they were on vacation in Aruba. The difference between what we're doing in timeshares, number one, everything we're doing is completely legal. It's SEC qualified. It's run through a FINRA broker-dealer. It's audited. We file annual reports. Everything's completely above board. Second of all, it's not a timeshare. So you invest in a property, you own shares in the property, but unfortunately you never get to use it. You participate in the financial ownership that comes from owning that property, but you can't sleep there. You can't stay there.
Sure. And also, who owns the condominiums? That's a really, really great question coming off of what you just said, because at the end of the day, you're not sleeping there. So who owns the condominiums?
So users come together through the app to buy the property together. And when you buy shares, you're buying shares in a company that owns only one property. So who owns the property? The shareholders of that company. And it's the same exact thing that you would have if you own a share of Amazon stock or Apple stock, where you own shares of a company. Except instead of owning Apple, the company, you own an apartment. And you own an apartment with all of these other shareholders who you probably never get to meet, but together you own 100% of that property.
And it really, really does get you some financial, well-being, if you will. If you do your proper research, which I'm sure your website certainly and your app does great things for people looking for these properties, you could really make yourself very financially wealthy by doing this, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of real estate investing is to build wealth, right? And you can build wealth in a few different ways. One is from income that you receive from the rental stream from that particular property. But more importantly, in these fast-growing cities, you participate in the appreciation of the prices. And the unique thing about condos is they tend to appreciate very quickly when they do appreciate, because they don't trade on the basis of income. They trade on the basis of how many buyers want to buy that property. I mean, think about the last time you tried to buy an apartment in New York City. The price is not reflective of any real mathematical concept. It's just a function of how many other buyers are stepping up and bidding against you in the bidding process, which if you're an owner of that property and you're participating in that price growth can be very advantageous to you as the owner.
Janine Yorio is with us on CEO Unplugged. She is the CEO and founder of Compound, a real estate investing app that lets individual investors buy shares in condominiums in the world's most popular cities. What kind of properties are available through Compound, Janine?
So today, users can only find properties that we believe are very well curated. They're located in some of the world's best cities, so New York, Miami, Austin, and Nashville. They are condominiums, so they are single-family homes, but they're in high-rise buildings. They're stacked vertically. They usually have an elevator, maybe a doorman, and they are good quality. So 3 of the 4 properties we have on the platform today are brand new. Nobody's ever lived in them before. One is a few years old. They need no renovation. We'll rent them out to traditional tenants, and they're the kind of thing that you would want to own if you were going to go out and buy properties yourself. One is a beautiful beachfront condo in Miami, where Lloyd Blankfein owns a condo side by side with the one that's on our app. So they're really high quality assets that we selected because we believe long term they have very strong potential for appreciation.
Well, you've painted a really nice picture on some of these properties. How do you select the properties? They sound wonderful and really amazing where they're located and some of the really great advantages.
Well, that's where it kind of comes down to the judgment of me and my team. I'm not the only person that has real estate investment experience. We have some very senior professionals on our team, and we sort through many deals before we decide to move forward on one. We negotiate the best price on behalf of our future shareholders. We try to find things that are the kinds of things we'd like to own for our own personal portfolio, and that's really the first filter that we put them all through. Would we want to own it? Would we want to live there? Would you want your mother to live there? This very visceral reaction that people often have with real estate, we use as our initial gut check, and then beyond that, it's math.
Who handles the property management?
We do. We manage the property. We find the tenants. We handle any tenant requests or complaints. We receive the rents. We do the auditing and reporting. We make the dividend distributions. We make it completely painless for the shareholders so that all they have to do is sit back and collect their checks.
Janine, you threw a number out earlier when we were talking about $50.
Right.
Is there a minimum investment? Is there a price point, if you will, for the people listening and watching today?
So we require a minimum investment of 10 shares of any individual property. The least expensive property on our platform has shares priced at $4.80. So that
Wow.
would mean the minimum investment is $48.
Yeah.
And we have people that invest $48. We have people that invest $4,800. We have people that invest $48,000. It's really a function of what you're comfortable with and maybe getting to know the product and starting to learn about real estate investing and making that decision to invest in real estate a small decision rather than a big taxing decision that stresses you out.
How do you see the real estate industry advancing with technology over the next handful of years?
I mean, the real estate industry is this big kind of monolithic thing that most people aren't a part of. And it has this reputation for being kind of an old guard, old boys club, shrouded in opacity. It's also complicated. You know, when you buy an asset, there are always pages and pages of documentation. Inevitably, there's a fax machine and a notary and a lawyer. It doesn't have to be that way. A lot of that is endemic to a system that just hasn't seen much innovation. And using technology, we can break down a lot of those barriers and improve access to an asset class that we know breeds financial security. So in New York City, for example, right now, there's a lot of attention on rent stabilization because the perception is that people feel more financially secure if their rents are not going up. But even more than locking in a low rent, what about actually becoming an owner?
Sure.
Ownership is what breeds financial security. And if we can break down the barriers so that more people, so that regular people can actually participate in the growth in the cities that they already live in, that they're working to make it a better, safer, more productive city, and yet most of them are shut out from owning. And through technology, you can break down a lot of those barriers, and that's precisely why we've built Compound.
Janine, where are people going to get more information about Compound again?
So 2 ways. First of all, you can check out our app on the App Store or on Google Play. It's called Compound. And then on our website, www.getcompound.com.
On CEO Unplugged, Janine Yorio is here. She is the CEO and founder of Compound, a real estate investing app that lets individual investors buy shares in condominiums in the world's most popular cities. What advice would you give to someone who is new to investing in real estate? What should they be looking for in a property?
So I believe, I might be misquoting, but I believe Warren Buffett has famously said, invest in what you know. So my advice would be to start with a place, start with a building you've walked past, and try to find real estate that you know intrinsically. You have a familiarity with the neighborhood, whether it's changing for the better, and start investing in things that you really know and understand. And as you develop more comfort, more sophistication, more familiarity, you can branch out. Invest outside of your home city, invest in places you've visited, invest in places your friends tell you are growing. But I think the easiest way to get started is start with a small dollar amount and start where you know.
Janine, I have learned a ton today, and now's the time as we get toward the end where if we could tie any loose ends together, if there's anything that you really feel is important that you haven't been able to say so far today about Compound, about the real estate industry, or even if it's something you'd like to repeat that you did say earlier in the show.
Again, I want to harp on this point that real estate can feel really scary and intimidating, but if you stop and look around, it's everywhere. And just because you don't own it doesn't mean you shouldn't own it. Everybody owns all of the There are people that own all of the buildings in New York City and all the cities we know and love, but it's very few people. If we can increase access to more people, fewer people will feel shut out and more people will actually be a part. And I think kind of developing that comfort with investing is how we bring more people onto the ownership ladder and reshape the ownership landscape so that more people can be a part of it.
One last question. As you go through the site, you said you kind of chose these on your own. Is there something that kind of gleams out at you on your properties? Is there something that you really like about one or two or a couple of your properties? You said some really, really great things about these properties.
Well, one in particular on our site is in Miami. It's in downtown Miami on Brickell. What's really special about it is that it's a screaming deal. We are in contract. Actually, we bought it for $150,000 less than the previous owner paid for it. And they bought it in 2016, so it wasn't that long ago. It's brand new. Nobody's ever lived there. It's an amazing location. It's an amazing deal on every metric possible. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity for people to start investing in Miami, which is a city we all know is growing, and a way to dip your toe in the water.
Before we go, again, what is Compound?
So Compound is a marketplace that brings together buyers and sellers from all around the world so that they can invest in some of the world's best cities in residential real estate.
Thank you so much, Janine Yorio, the CEO and founder of Compound, a real estate investing app that lets individual investors buy shares in condominiums in the world's most popular cities. It's been great having you on CEO Unplugged.
Thank you, Bartel.